Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's so great to see you here this morning. On this rainy morning, I thought we would be empty, and look, the place is almost full, and that is just awesome because we get to worship together and lift our hearts in an otherwise kind of dreary weekend. So please rise as you are willing and able as we sing our opening hymn, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Very nice. So we're going to do our covenant this morning. I want to invite the Rayfield family to come up and light our chalice this morning. Here you go. Do the job there. Enriched by our differences and joined together in our search for meaning, we covenant with ourselves and each other to seek truth in a spirit of love, to strive for justice, and to serve others with a joyful heart. Thank you. And let's greet each other this morning. Take a few minutes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see that members of this congregation are not undeterred by a few drops of moisture. And it's good to see you on this day, and it's nice to be together in a warm, safe place. Welcome. This is a radically welcoming community. That's one of its defining characteristics. It opens its doors to everyone. It is also based on the collective belief, which we believe is healing and transforming, that life can be altered and transformed and made better by life-enhancing beliefs. This is an old but ever new belief that comes to us down through the centuries and has been expressed in a number of ways, one of which was by the Buddha more than 2,500 years ago when he spoke, and it was written down that he said these words: "No mother nor father nor any other kin can do greater good for oneself than a mind directed well." A mind directed well. And how we try to direct our minds is towards common values which we collectively affirm in various ways. Some of our contemporary beliefs and values are interdependence, the belief that we are all connected; equity, equality among all people, that we are all, despite any of our differences, and all of our differences are at our core equal, that life can be transformed. We believe in pluralism, which is to say we embrace the diversity, which is the reality of life. We don't shun it, or we're not afraid of it. And we believe in generosity, that our spirits are elevated by being generous people. And we believe in justice, the fairness of all, especially the lost, the least, the marginalized, the downtrodden, the forgotten, the hated. These provide a framework within which we work out our own unique principles and beliefs. And one last thing I wish to say as I welcome you here: this is a place where everyone, and I do mean everyone, matters. And that what you do and say and contribute to this place, by your words and by your deeds and by everything you do, matter. This is a community, for all the reasons above, is unlike many of the communities that exist in our country. Welcome. I am thankful for your presence here. And now, our centering song. Every week we make a space in the service to acknowledge the joys and concerns and sorrows that lie in people's hearts. And we do that by coming forward, as I will ask you in a moment, and dropping a stone in the water to symbolize that joy or sorrow. And we would like today or in the near future to add a little twist to that, which is that there are some among us who on any given Sunday would like to share their joy or their sorrow publicly. And we would like to provide a venue for you to do that. And so we are inviting the congregation to share with the chair of the caring committee on a weekly basis, as they feel so moved, joy or concern or sorrow that they would like to share. And during the service, as we are dropping the stones, you will see on the screen those joys or sorrows that people have said they are ready to share with the public. But we know that for many, there are joys and sorrows which they want to keep in their heart alone. So now I invite you to, as you feel so moved, to come forward to drop a stone in the water.
I shall drop one final stone for all the joys and concerns of those expressed on Zoom and the ones that we hold in our hearts. And then when I drop that stone, please join us in your seats singing Spirit of Life. Good morning. So our story today comes from the Jewish tradition, and it goes like this. Once there was a farmer, and he lived in a small farmhouse with his wife and his children and his parents. And one day he came down to breakfast, and it was just so crowded and noisy and uncomfortable. People were crashing into each other. It was just chaotic. And he started to think about how uncomfortable he was in this small house with all of these people. And he thought about it and thought about it over the next couple of weeks. And it just started to really bother him, irritate him. And he found that he started to become kind of grumpy with his family and short-tempered. And so he went to the rabbi. The rabbi was a wise man, and he knew the rabbi could help him with this problem. So he went to the rabbi, and he explained the situation. And the rabbi said, "I know exactly what will help you." The rabbi said, "You are a farmer, right?" And the farmer said, "Yes." And the rabbi said, "So you have chickens, right?" And the farmer said, "Yes, I have chickens." And the rabbi said, "Okay, bring the chickens into the house." Now, the man thought this was a strange idea, but he knew that the rabbi was a very wise man. So he did what he was instructed to do, and he went home and he brought the chickens into his house. And his house was no less crowded or less noisy. In fact, it was now more crowded and more noisy because there were chickens everywhere. And they were clucking and they were pecking and there were feathers everywhere. And the next day, the man went back to the rabbi and he said, "Rabbi, I did what you told me to do, but my house is no less crowded or noisy. In fact, it's more crowded and noisy now." And the rabbi said, "Let me think." And he thought about it and he said, "Do you have goats?" And the man said, "Well, yes, I have goats." And he said, "Okay, bring the goats into the house." Now, the man knew that the rabbi was a wise man, and he thought that he should follow the advice of the wise man. So he went home and he brought the goats in the house. And do you know what? The house was no less noisy or crowded. In fact, it was more noisy and more crowded because there were chickens everywhere, and now there were goats butting heads and butting up against the walls and causing absolute chaos in his house. So the next day, the farmer went back to the rabbi, and he said, "Rabbi, I've done what you said, and my house is no less noisy or crowded. In fact, it is more noisy and more crowded." And the rabbi said, "Okay, let me think about this." And he thought about it and he said, "Do you have any sheep?" And the farmer said, I have sheep." And the rabbi said, "Great, awesome, bring the sheep into the house." So the farmer went back, and what did he do? He took the sheep and he brought them into the house because he believed the rabbi was a wise man. So now in the farmer's small farmhouse, there was the farmer and his wife and his children and his parents and his chickens and his goats and his sheep. And do you think it was any less noisy or crowded? No, it was more noisy and more crowded. And now there were sheep. Sheep are big. There were sheep clomping everywhere, and there were goats, and there were chickens, and they were laying their eggs in his bed, and he didn't have anywhere to sleep, and he was exhausted and angry and frustrated. And his whole house smelled like a barn. So he went back to the rabbi, and he said, "Rabbi, I have done everything you've said, and my house is even more noisy and crowded." And the rabbi said, "Well, this is a tough one." And he thought about it and thought about it. And the farmer sat there and watched the rabbi think about it. And the rabbi said, "I know. Go home, put the chickens back in the chicken coop, put the goats and the sheep back in the barn, and then your house will be less noisy and crowded." Now that seemed to make sense. So the man went home and he put the animals back where they belonged, and his family, his wife and his children and his parents cleaned up the house, got it smelling nice and fresh. And the next morning, the farmer woke up and he sat down at breakfast and he thought to himself, "What a spacious, quiet, peaceful home I have." Thank you for listening to my story today.
Now that's an example of radical hospitality, isn't it, huh? You know, one of the great gifts we share each morning on Sunday is worship together. And some of you might remember a while ago, well, at this time of the service, we would pass a basket around. And now times have changed, right? And it's not just with COVID, but, you know, I make my contributions, you know, from my pledge through my bank account. And it's fun, it's consistent, it's easy, I don't forget it. You know, the treasurer likes it because the money comes in regularly and so forth. But, you know, one of the things about this is that it's broken this relationship between us being together and our gratitude for it, our giving toward it. You know, when we give, we don't give to a church. We don't give to a board. We don't give to Reverend Ed. We give to each other. When you give to the person next to you, or 3 rows behind, or the folks preparing coffee hour. And I think it's unfortunate that we've broken this. So I just want to suggest that maybe each morning on Sunday, maybe you don't put a big gift in, but maybe you put a little gift in. You do something. It helps us remember that this church is not a church without us. The offering this morning will be gratefully received by all of us.
It is time for our children and teachers to go to their religious education classes. Joy will play our sending song in just a moment. We sing it together the first time through, and then the second time our teachers will go into the lobby to get ready, and then the third time our children will go to join up with their teachers. Parents, please remember, pickup from religious education is at 10:45. Thanks. Teachers.
Dave Demarest, come on down. Come up here. Let's acknowledge you, my friend. I am astounded over and over again how it is through the generosity of people that this community exists. I mean, think about it. This is a community which weekly and daily is called into being by the gifts of people. And Dave, could I ask you to step up one step higher, because we want to make sure everybody gets to see you, okay? So Dave is one of those people that make it possible for us to have a church. And Dave has recently stepped down as chair of building and property after 11 years. 11 years, people. But let me just give you a little idea of what Dave has been doing. During his tenure in that capacity, he has overseen the following: AC installed in the sanctuary. Can I have an amen for that thing alone right there? Replaced the main pipe system under the church and decommissioned the septic system and connected the church to the county sewer system. I'm glad we got a sewer system, people. Parking lot resurfaced. Partnered with the Memorial Garden Committee for a revitalized project, which we all enjoy, or many of us. Fellowship Hall flooring replaced and kitchenette rewired and updated so we can enjoy refreshments. Fellowship Hall replaced. Front door replaced all chandelier and recessed lighting with LED bulbs, and many other smaller projects, including managing day-to-day maintenance and repair. Dave, do you have another job, or were you doing this full-time? Because it sounds like...
No, this was just my hobby.
All right. You want to say a word?
No.
Okay, you can if you want. But Dave, we appreciate all you've done. And especially your work is done outside of the eyes and ears of others, but it makes it possible to have the structure we have. And so could you join me in showing your love for Dave and what he's done? It's a miracle. This institution is a miracle of generosity, if you think about it. 99% of what Dave does, or people like him, nobody sees. But everybody gets to enjoy the fruits of it. I'd like to share with you a reading, or a series of small readings about gratitude. I love that story Chrissy gave. I think we could call that the sermon and go home. It was so good. I loved it, but don't go yet. But I'd like to share with you, as a way of preparing you for my remarks, a few views of gratitude from different perspectives. One of them comes from the great Dr. Oliver Sacks, who wrote, "I cannot pretend that I am without fear, but my predominant feeling is one of gratitude. I have loved and been loved. I have been given much, and I have given something in return. Above all, I am a sentient being, a thinking animal on this beautiful planet, and that in itself has been an enormous privilege and adventure." And from Ralph Waldo Emerson, a Unitarian minister turned public lecturer and writer, who wrote, "Cultivate the habit of being grateful for every good thing that comes to you, and to give thanks continuously. And because all things have contributed to your advancement, you should include all things in your gratitude." In a few moments, I will share with you a series of stories that map, in a way, my progress to understanding gratitude. Thank you, choir. My goodness, you're wonderful. Can you sing every Sunday? Let me know if anyone has a hard time hearing me. I'll just shout louder. I have learned some things by being able to be a Unitarian Universalist minister, lo, these many years. I don't want to say how many, it's too many. But I have been able to observe people, not read books about people, but observe people, and come to certain conclusions about life, how life really works, by observing people over decades. And so as a minister, I see certain things, and one of the things I have seen is that there is a huge difference between persons who view life through the lens of gratitude and people who view life through the lens of bitterness about what they don't have or were denied. I have known people who have very little who are sublimely happy. I have known people who are wealthy who night and day only think and dream of how can I get more and secure what I have. So it is a paradox of life that we, to some degree, although many things are imposed on us, we, to some degree, have the power, as the quote from Buddha suggests, of the well-directed mind, of the well-directed heart and mind. We have some control over that. And one of the well-directed directions is, I think, gratitude. I'd like to share 3 or 4 stories with you that bespeak of my journey about understanding gratitude. When my eldest daughter, Allie, was about 2.5, I think, and she had just learned to walk, I would sometimes take her to my office, and I was working in the Pacific Northwest at the time. And if you can imagine, the weather like we're having today, it occurs for about 6 months, day after day there. And so I would get out of the car, I would hold Allie's little hand, and I would walk across the parking lot towards my office. And everywhere we went, there were little puddles, because there were puddles everywhere because of the incessant rain. But wherever there was an indention in the asphalt pavement, there was a little puddle. And to my great surprise, Allie would stop at every puddle and just gaze at it. And I would look over at my office and think, oh God, all those things I need to do are over there. And she is obsessed with the puddles. Why? And then she learned that if she kicked the puddle, she could create ripples. And oh my God, that fascinated her. And again, she was mesmerized by the puddles. And then I said, okay, we'll go another route. So when I would take her, I would go another route, and it would be like going by the edge of the woods here. And there were certain rocks that protruded out of the ground and that were had like freckles on them, little dark spots. And she was fascinated by that. And she would sometimes try to climb the rocks, and she would see low-hanging limbs, and she would look at the petals of the limbs and just be fascinated with it. And I would think, oh my God, I don't have time for this. I've got to stop taking her to the office. And then, after a while, a year or so after this, I began to think, did she know something, or was she aware of something that I had lost? A fascination and a wonderment toward the mundane. And I was obsessed with a series of goals that was imposed on me or others. Second story. The point is, did I have something to learn from my daughter? Had I lost something? Second story. I'm at the same place, the same area, and I go to a board meeting that was held at the house of a member of the church, of course, and a board member. And this was located on the Puget Sound in the area north of Seattle. And this house was about 16 blocks from the edge of the water, and it was at the top of a crest. And during the summer months, the area between Seattle, Washington, and Vancouver Island is truly one of the most beautiful places for that 4-week period in the States, I think. So it rains the rest of the time. But anyway, so I was there, and I came into the house, and I looked out this huge picture window. And out there I saw the outline was filled with these tall trees that were so green. Everything was growing wild. There's so much water out there, and the sun had been shining, and everything was blooming. It was beautiful. And then there was the water of the Puget Sound, the dark blue-green water of the Puget Sound. And then there was one of the ferry boats, and they're painted green, and then the top of them is gray or white. And it was a huge boat, and it's sailing, and it's heading over to Whidbey Island. Whidbey Island's the island directly west of where we were, and it was beautiful and magnificent. And up north, you could see the islands that head towards Orcas Island, which is kind of the crown jewel of that whole area of islands. But anyway, I looked out at this magnificent view, and I just kind of, I stopped, because she had a fantastic view of this scene outside the window. And so after a while, after greeting a couple of people, I went to her and I said, "You have a fantastic view out your window." And she said, "Which window?" I said, "The one that's at the western side of your house." And she said, "Oh, we hardly notice that anymore. We've been here so long, we hardly see it." And I thought to myself, how can you not see this view? How can you take for granted the view that existed outside the window? And I thought to myself, I am to her like Allie was to me in the story before. And it made me think to myself, is there something we humans lose that is precious, which is simply the perception of the wonder of life? Let's fast forward to 2017. That year, I received a diagnosis of prostate cancer. It terrified me. I think it was due to the election of 2016. I'm for real. I was terrified. My eldest sister had died of cancer at age 50, pancreatic cancer. I attempted to learn as much as I could about the illness and how to deal with it. I could not accurately assess the threat, And sometimes I found myself, this was most terrifying to me, I found myself unable to fully trust my doctors because I came to realize that the kind of treatment they recommended was directly related to what kind of facilities of treatment they had at the hospital. That's another story. But my fears filled the void created by my ignorance of being able to assess the situation. I went through a long series of investigation of where to get treated and how to get treated, and I ended up going to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And I underwent a medical procedure called cryotherapy, where they kill the cancer by freezing it. And after that, I was diagnosed as cancer-free. Because I had sporadically in the preceding months thought that I might die, I found myself experiencing like an involuntary mood and feeling that came over me. Immense gratitude that I was alive. Things that bothered me no longer bothered me. And I began to say things like, unless somebody is pointing a gun at my head, I'm not worried about it, because everything else is trivial. I found delight in just being alive, being in the moment, and enjoying as much of everything as I could around me. I had this feeling, involuntarily thrust upon me, that there was an abundance of things to appreciate, if only I could see them. And therein lies the difficulty, the lens by which I saw life. But there was an abundance of wonderful things around me to enjoy and to celebrate. The moment was sufficient. All that I needed was right in front of me. But with the passage of time, this deep appreciation waned. But I had a memory of it. And I discovered that the experience of gratitude can be created by a deliberate choice to notice and appreciate as much as possible. Gratitude, I realized, is something that we have naturally as children. We're born into the world with it, it seems. But as we grow older, many things can diminish and destroy our natural gratitude. The reality is, I came to realize that everything is a gift. Everything, if we see it aright. Life is a miracle, and by miracle I mean a highly improbable or extraordinary event or development that brings very welcome consequences. In this sense, the earth is a miracle. We know of no other species in the whole cosmos that we've been able to explore. We know no planet like the earth in the whole wide realm of space we've been able to explore. Our beating hearts are a miracle. The vast journey of evolution that has led us here has so many improbabilities woven into it to constitute a miracle. The atmosphere that sustains us is a miracle. And I must add that my praise of gratitude does not involve ignoring or minimizing suffering and hardship. Life can be very difficult. The challenges of life can be very, very difficult. And for many people on earth, life is like living in a perpetual hell, a real hell of despair, grief, injustice, poverty, cruelty, and hopelessness, to be sure. But as the old saying goes, I find benefit and merit in trying to light a candle rather than curse the darkness. I've found it personally powerful to cultivate, or try to cultivate, a deep appreciation of life. And by that I mean an appreciation of anything and everything all the time. But we need to be aware of how human nature and society and social media and commercial forces and a myriad of other tendencies influence us in ways that push us away from gratitude. During our daughter, Lily, the younger daughter, Lily, Allie's the older daughter, in her first year of college, after her first week, she came to our house. Now, she goes to Wake Forest in Winston-Salem, and we were living in Winston-Salem at the time. And she came home after 3 days. And she entered our house, and she just started weeping uncontrollably, sobbing uncontrollably. And this is a young woman that normally is very composed. And it literally took us about 5 minutes to find out what was bothering her. And what was bothering her is this. She was assigned, as everybody at Wake Forest in their freshman year, she was assigned a roommate without any pre-matching at all. And her roommate was white. Lily is a dark-skinned Asian, was white, looked like and dressed like she had just come off the cover of Vogue magazine. And she and her family were very wealthy, with a home in Manhattan and one on Long Island. And she had just come with her friends from a big party on Long Island all summer long. And this same young woman had come down to the school with a group of women who were from the same private school in Connecticut, had gone to school together for 12 years, and they already had their bonds, and she felt very excluded. This is a normally very composed young woman. Lily is not rich, or we're not rich. And when we were in Atlanta, before that, I had made sure she went to a school that was 65% Asian with people like her, but she went to college and it was a totally different thing. She felt excluded. She felt like she was one of the unimportant ones, and on and on. In this experience, we saw something that talks about the power of the comparing mind. It is in all of us to some degree, and it destroys gratitude. Gratitude is undermined by the comparing mind, wherein we continually are tempted and encouraged to compare our bodies, our possessions, our status, our life situation, and everything else with other people who supposedly have more and better than us. And the comparing mind in its incessant varieties gives us the message that we are insufficient, that we are lacking, that we and our lives are not enough. And this is the opposite of gratitude. We live in a society that to some degree is predicated on the goal of trying to persuade us to be possessed by the comparing mind. The absence of gratitude and the power of the comparing mind and the endless pursuit of more to fill the emptiness has become such a chronic problem and has brought about such immense consequences in the form of climate change and the myriad problems related to that, such as mass extinction, social turmoil, migrating populations searching for a safer place to live, and so on. So it seems gratitude is not merely a frivolous indulgence, but a necessity to help us stay in right relationship and in harmony with the world and reality. We cannot live in a perpetual state of wonderment and gratitude. We have personal, professional, interpersonal pressures and obligations, commitments that demand our attention and responses, and on and on. Gratitude is not an antidote for everything that troubles us, but it has an important role to play in our life if we would let it. I close my remarks in a spirit of gratitude by expressing my gratitude to each of you. I would like to thank you for who you are. I would like to thank you for the sacrifices each of you have made for your families, for your loved ones, for your children, for the generosity you have extended to this community and to those you love. To thank you for all the things that you have done and said for the sake of what is good and true, that no one else will know but you. Thank you for helping in large and small ways, many times in ways that no one else will see or have a chance to acknowledge, to advance at least a little the cause of hope and to build places where compassion can flourish and justice can be honored. May we remember that each of us is a gift to the world, literally, and to one another, and to those who come after us. And now our closing hymn, which I invite you to rise as you are willing and able to join in singing, is hymn number 1064 in the blue Artil hymnals, Blue Boat Home, 1064.